Hey, BookTube. Welcome to my Nonfiction November for 2025. So years ago, I had a BookTube channel back in 2018. I'll get into that in another video. It was very small, but I'm back again. I have a little bit less going on with my life. So now I want to go through, just jump right into it, what I read in 2025. It's not an all-encompassing list. For one, I read mostly nonfiction anyway. So I thought this was just a good trend just to restart my channel and just to go into it from there. The first one that I read was Careless People with Sarah Wynne Williams. She was a big Facebook, not exec, but she had a higher up position there, working with Zuckerberg, working with Sheryl Sandberg, and she did some policy things. She was originally from New Zealand, and that plays an important part to the story. What I liked about the book overall was that, one, it was broken up into really short sections. I like those kind of books when I have 5 minutes, I can just jump right into, read a section, and then go into the next. It just makes it a really quick read, I guess. The I'd say one part about it was there's no way to really verify all the allegations and things in the story, but having worked in a corporate environment before, I can imagine a lot of it's true. I can imagine there's a couple of sides to the story. She had two kids while she was working at Facebook. A lot of companies will push work-life balance and say, hey, you can do what you need to do, take care of your family first. But when these companies are going through big shifts and trends, as Facebook was during the 2014, 2015 timeframe, like the time she was working there, I'm certain that there was some pressure on her added to really keep it moving. She talked about all the travel needs and their expectations and how she expected uh, them to interact with other people. I could imagine there was some stressors involved. And then, of course, the essay dealing with trips with certain male executives and things like that. You can just imagine. Anybody that's worked in a corporate environment can definitely imagine where you can't directly square it to one person or another. You never know what happened there. At the same time, you can imagine it can be a pretty toxic work environment. And I just thought, pretty quick read, just pretty enlightening. It won't change my life because I don't plan on working there. At the same time, hey, definitely interesting to know. Um, the next one, one of my favorites really for the month, probably for the year, was The Road to Jonestown with about Jim Jones. And so to add on with the Careless People book, I read that on Kindle. It was my first Kindle Unlimited book. I'd never signed up for Kindle Unlimited, no matter how much they push it, but signed up for Kindle Unlimited. They showed Careless People, and I said, you know what? I'll go ahead and give it a try. I love that book. I'm glad I signed up. I probably would not have bought that book on Kindle. Just reading the description really just didn't look like something that I would enjoy, but having read it, yeah, it really was. I like business case studies, things like that. So that was really within my niche, really, let's just say. As soon as I got done with it, I returned it through Kindle Unlimited. I guess it really doesn't matter how long you keep a book or anything like that. I guess it's more of a certain number of books, but more in that here in a minute. My favorite for the month, maybe for the year, was Jim Jones, this book about Jim Jones, The Road to Jonestown by Jeff Gwynne. And a little bit of backstory. My wife is from Guyana, South America. I'd never heard of the place until 25 years ago when I met her. And as soon as I started telling people that we were dating, things like that, my parents, they said, hey, don't drink the Kool-Aid. And I'm like, what does that even mean? So this is early 2000s. This event happened a little bit before I was born in 79 here. And I had no idea what it meant. So I went, looked up the backstory, and this book just kind of dove into the details. So for those of you who are not familiar and everything, Jim Jones led basically a cult. And in the end, there was 900 plus people that, I know YouTube doesn't like certain words, but 900 plus people that voluntarily, most of them voluntary, not all of them, committed what they call Masada, or they X themselves out, they off themselves, all in a little small town in Guyana, in the middle of the jungle, really. So, really, the Guyanese people, in short, they one, don't like to be associated with the event, of course, because it was really a bunch of Americans. And I really wanted to know more about the backstory. This book was a really good read into the backstory and really dove deep. Long story short, there was basically three different groups that followed Jim Jones. There were the people that followed him because of civil rights. He pushed some initiatives when he was in America. He was a pastor, basically. He pushed some initiatives to where you think during the 60s and things like that, during the 70s, he pushed some small changes, things like that, throughout San Francisco and a couple of other places that he mentions in the book where he lived. He would work with the local governments. He would actually fight for change if some of the black people in his congregation or in the neighborhood, let's say they were having a problem with the water bill or something like that, he would have somebody write letters and he would go and take action, and he would show that he had this big congregation behind him to do those specific things. So there were people that followed him for that. Then there was a whole nother set of people that followed him because he would do these fake miracle healings in God's name, of course. So he says. And later on throughout the book, they showed how he did this. It was really, really fake. He might have like an old piece of chicken guts or something that would make people vomit. And while they were doing the big service and jumping up and down and things like that, somebody would sneakily put the piece of chicken guts in that person's mouth. And of course, they would gag. Somebody else would grab it and say, yes, this is the cancer. This person has been healed. Person never knew that they had cancer or anything like cancer. And they were diagnosed, and that's it. Of course, he couldn't heal actual people with ailments. But needless to say, there was a set of people that followed him because they thought that he was the second coming of Jesus, and they thought that he could actually do these things. And that's why they were stuck to him. Then you had this third set, and the third set was people that just supported socialism. Some of them were successful, but they figured that everybody should live in sort of a commune. Everybody should live like them. You should get rid of your earthly possessions. He would have people signing over houses, things like that, land, whatever kind of property. He had people that made good money would just give it all to his church because they wanted to show that they were, better than normal, the capitalist society, and that they would give away possessions and things like that to live with them. Long story short, lots of different things happened. And you got to think during the 60s, early 70s, people were really afraid of nuclear war. They thought anytime that things could come to a head and we all might be wiped out. He looked at a couple of places that might actually survive a nuclear war. And I did not know this, but there was some article that said basically that section of South America was one area that would survive a nuclear holocaust because there's just nothing out there. They're not really developed. They wouldn't exactly be a target in anybody's war. So that was one reason. There was a couple other reasons. He ended up having to, of course, SA is always involved. There was, he had a wife, and then he had different concubines, different girlfriends, things like that. He got a person in his group pregnant, had a baby with that person, and then there was a custody battle, and then that also led to him leaving America. So there was a lot of reasons for him to leave America, and then somehow he got those 900 and something people plus more to go to Guyana. And it went through all his little different steps in life, showed who his supporters were and how he got people. It's incredible in a way. I mean, it's sad that you can get somebody to go to that level, but they mention it in the book. It's like boiling a frog. You don't throw the frog in the hot water because it'll just jump out. You throw the frog in normal water and you just slowly turn up the temperature. So he would do things along the way to test people's loyalty. And he had scenarios where he said, hey, we might have to do this. We might have to do this thing to make a big statement one day, drink the Kool-Aid. And he did this multiple times. And multiple times people were like, no, no. And then some people did it and they lived. So when people lived, there were some people that thought, okay, well, he's testing loyalty. He's not really going to do this. On the big day of, he knew what was going down. And a congressman from America came to visit to check on conditions and things like that. The congressman was murdered by Jim Jones' people. That started a whole big thing. They knew that, you can't live after that. You can't live like that after that. And unfortunately, he made the decision to order everyone to drink the Kool-Aid. It's the biggest, I call it, well, in the book, they introduced the term Masada that I had never heard, but it was the biggest type of political statement then in a long time, in long period of history, where that many people did that at one time. Masada was a term from Israel from thousands of years ago, where this army knew that they were about to lose a battle and they were going to be captured or killed. There was no way around it. So what they all did before they could be captured, they all took themselves out in this area called Masada. So Jim Jones uses that term to say that he's going to do a political statement at some point. So hopefully that word is not banned by YouTube or anything, but we'll see, and we'll upload this video and everything. So I thought that was just a really good book, given my family connection and things like that. It was just good for me to read and get more detail about the story and everything. Again, Guyana considers it, since it's so far away from their main civilization, this is in the middle of the jungle, most Guyanese people want nothing to do with this incident or anything like that. And one last thing, I also understand why the Guyanese government agreed to let these people live there. Even back then, they were having problems with Venezuela, where Venezuela was direct thinking about attacking and talking about attacking and things. So having a group of 1,000 Americans in kind of that disputed area helped them, because they knew that with that many Americans there, Venezuela's not going to attack. They wouldn't want to risk it. So just overall, it was just an interesting read there. Obviously, that didn't work out well for the Guyanese government either, and they're not happy with the situation. So that was that one. Next one was presidential inaugurations. This one had been on my TBR for a longer time. I am big into presidential history. This is Paul F. Boiler. He's deceased now. This was written in 2001. It's just about the little small things at inaugurations. January 20th comes. We see the president sworn in, no matter which party. We see the parade. We see certain events. They go to dinners, things like that. But sometimes we don't think about where all this stuff came from, because back when George Washington came into office, it was on a different day, first of all. People had to travel there. It was harder for you to get from wherever your home state was to Washington, D.C. in the first place. We just don't think about how things changed along the time. This book is a little bit dated because it's 2001. We've had so many different things added and subtracted, and different people and things like that. I'll give you just one. Even when you see the president salute the military as he's boarding Air Force One, or the military's marching past, you see a presidential salute. That wasn't even always a thing. That only started with basically Reagan, the 40th president. There are a lot of different traditions that we look at as normal now, and whenever something shifts, people will say this is unprecedented or that's unprecedented. Well, a lot of traditions in the first place are not really things that have just been going on and on each inauguration. We've only had 45 people serve as president, and 47 different administrations. 2 people, Trump and Grover Cleveland, served non-consecutive terms, so that's why they're counted separately. It was just really interesting to hear the little bit different facts. I am interested in another version by, of course, a different author, because this one is no longer with us. That would be more up to date. That would cover more recent events and little changes like that. That said, I do read a lot of campaign books. I'm going to do a separate video on that. Do read a lot of campaign/political books. Even some of them are just kind of gossip and things. But I'm interested in those little small changes and things like that. So when I'm watching on TV, I can pick up, oh, that's normal. That's something new. I think the last one for the month was The Courage to Be Disliked. And so that one was more about not engaging in vertical relationships. It kind of talked about how even when we have a friend, we have a peer, somebody that we know is a peer, sometimes we can still put them on a pedestal, or we can bring them down a notch, and that relationship becomes vertical instead of just horizontal, where we're both actually peers, and you're not judging yourself as better, and you're also not putting them on a pedestal as better than you. I thought the book was interesting. It was basically a conversation between an older person and a younger person. The younger person is challenging the older person on his ideas, and then eventually they come to see each other as peers, while more the younger person comes to see that older person as a peer. It goes a lot into Alderian psychology, which I was not familiar with, and probably not something that I'm altogether interested in. I thought the book was interesting. If you are a Christian, or if you go to church and you have a religious belief, you might find some kind of awkwardness in this book. The way I see it is that really, even people who are not religious, they have some sort of belief system or something that they look toward, even if we don't notice it. I think that this book is definitely not for, it's not directed at religious people at all. I would say it's more of, I would think, some type of Buddhist thing or something like that. Um, Altogether, it was worth the read, but I read the physical copy of this one. I don't actually have it anymore because I donated that like the second I was done with it. It wasn't bad. It just, I don't know, maybe wasn't my cup of tea. But at the same time, especially if someone is looking for a self-help book, that's the other caveat there. There's times where I go towards self-help and I'll read self-help, and there's some times where I'm like, absolutely not. I'm never reading another self-help book again. This was a time where I read it just because it was on my TBR, but maybe I wasn't thinking in the self-help mindset at the time. But it was still a good read. I'm not going to read it again. That's why I donated it. I donate almost all of my books, even these two that I liked overall. They will be donated here shortly, just because why am I going to keep them if I'm never going to read them again? That said, I hope to go over my TBR, hope to go over my BookTube thoughts in general, and I'm looking forward to other videos. Like and subscribe, and thanks. Hope to see you again.